In this quick video, I want to show you why I believe that Bitcoin is about to enter into about a 12-month bear market where I think the price of Bitcoin will bottom, and also we'll tap into the MSTR price and have a look at what's going to happen to strategy stock. There's a lot of FUD, and I want to show you what I think is going to happen to strategy. So if those topics sound interesting, make sure to destroy the like button and subscribe to the Crypto channel for daily updates on the price of Bitcoin and crypto. With that said, let's jump right in. Now, there's something you should know. Okay, the 4-year cycles for Bitcoin have been absolutely beautifully intact. And we've covered this before, but just as a reminder, the time it took to reach from the bottom to the top of these cycles are exactly the same number of days. It's always 1,064 days. Even including the Genesis cycle, the tops always happen in Q4 of post-halving year. It's always the same thing, and we've done the same thing in this cycle. And another point of context, we are clear that there's a 95% chance that I think we have entered into a bear market, given the fact that we've lost the 50 simple moving average. And every single time you lose the 54 simple moving average, disregarding COVID, it is an indicator that the bear market has begun. All right, so two very important pieces of context. Now, going into why I think it's going to be a 12-month bear market is, well, if you do remind yourself that the 4-year cycles have been intact and they're still intact, even though I think the next cycle it's going to be broken, perhaps a topic for later, is when you keep that in mind, you look at where we are now and you go back 4 years to the price of Bitcoin in 2021, leading into 2022. This is about, so you got the breakdown, you're around here. Okay, so to reach from there until the bottom of the bear market took you about 315 to about 320 days. That is 11 months, all right? So it took you from where we are now about 11 months to find the bottom for Bitcoin. If you go to the prior cycle, consider where we are now. So you broke from the 50 simple moving average. From that point to reach the bottom of the cycle, it took a little bit less time. It took you about 250 days. Actually, even less. But the thing is, it took you longer to break that 50 simple moving average. So I wouldn't measure it from the break of the 50. I would go a little bit back and I would measure it from about January of 2018. So from there, it takes you about 11 to 12 months. Also, and you can see in the Genesis cycle, it's not really so relevant, the Genesis, for this specific example, but we'll show it anyways. You can see it took also roughly about a year to reach the bottom from where we were in comparison of a timing basis. So from post Q4, you see the top, and then 1 month after the top, if you go from 1 month after to the bottom, it takes about 11 to 12 months. So it's always the same, 11 to 12 months. All right. So when we zoom into this price action, assuming that the 4-year cycles have been intact and they are still intact, which we are assuming, then it would take about 11 to 12 months for you to find a bottoming in price. Where exactly do I think the bottom will happen? Well, here we're going to have to look into the 200 simple moving average over on the weekly time frame. Every time that Bitcoin has bottomed, at least in the cycle of 2015 to 20, well, the bear market in 2015, that bottomed out at the 200-week moving average. Then you saw a bottoming on Bitcoin on the 200-week moving average in 2019. Again, we're disregarding COVID. Unfortunately, in the last cycle, there was so much amount of retail FOMO into the markets. There were so many big breakdowns, including FTX, Luna, Celsius, BlockFi. Bitcoin broke below the 200-week moving average. So in my opinion, this happened because the government printed double the money supply. You had so much retail interest. The dump was just more severe than the pump, as the pump was very severe. So I think that's why we went below the 200-week moving average. But I would say that the 200-week is a good target for where Bitcoin can come down to in this specific bear market. It's not going to be 55K, don't worry, because in the next 11 to 12 months time, this is going to trend up and likely will trend up into the upper 60s to the $70,000 mark. So overall, in the next 11 to 12 months, I think we're going to see a drop into that 200 moving average. And that would just mean basically about from where we are currently, it would be only a 25% more correction. And I don't think that is bad at all. From the top of this market, assuming it was October 6th, that would only be about a 50% correction. Bitcoin has done that multiple amounts of times, and I think it would be a fantastic bear market bottom to experience. Can we be certain that this will be the case 100%? No, this is more speculative, but this scenario will be more refined and more detailed as time passes. But just as a skull, as a skeleton, I think this is a good speculation, in my opinion, to have in terms of what we think can happen to Bitcoin only from a technical approach. When we ditch only technicals and take a look at monetary policy, and take a look at the business cycles, because there are the liquidity people that like to take a look at liquidity only. I like to blend both of those things together. So let's blend liquidity, which is the business cycles. Liquidity. No. So okay, they're two separate things. I'm going to call this the business cycles. It's more accurate. So we'll take a look at the business cycles and we'll blend it with the technical analysis. I think the two very good indicators of the business cycles is the ISM PMI and the central bank balance sheet. I want to take a look at the balance sheets and take you to this 2019 phase and draw you a comparison of this 2019 phase and where the price of Bitcoin is today. So looking at 2019, Bitcoin was exiting quantitative tightening, and then it was entering into, so you saw huge amounts of quantitative tightening. You saw a massive pump on Bitcoin where retail interest was still pretty low. From the lows of Bitcoin in 2018, you went up about 300%, and then you saw a rough of a 50% correction, obviously not including COVID. Then you drifted around for a while after quantitative easing kicked in. Liquidity took about 7 to 8 months to transfer into Bitcoin, and then things started going towards the upside. I think this is an important comparison because you saw this 50% crash as quantitative tightening ended, and it will end on December the 1st of this year. So Bitcoin crashed into quantitative tightening ending and consolidated in a downwards way with quantitative easing being introduced. And after a few months of quantitative easing, where capital would be able to flow from the central bank to Bitcoin, then you started making your move to the upside. And that actually makes sense for our example here, assuming that we see quantitative easing kick in about Q2 of next year, which is what I would predict. Then Q2 of next year, QE kicks in. You're probably going to see in the short term a move into the 200 daily moving average. You're probably going to come down to this level, consolidate for a while. QE kicks in, and after a few months of QE kicking in, I think like 4 months will be enough. Again, time will tell with this one, but I think Bitcoin is more sensitive to liquidity these days. So I think 4 months will be enough. And towards Q4 of next year, which is 11 to 12 months from now, you see the bottom, and then Bitcoin starts making its way to the upside. And I think this is where we may break off from diminishing returns. Obviously, from peak to peak, returns have been getting smaller and smaller and smaller. This was 1,900%. And then this was only 230%. And then this was only 79%. Inflation adjusted, it is even worse. Okay? Inflation adjusted, it is even worse. So let's not even get into that. But I think next cycle is where we break off. I think next cycle is where Bitcoin actually truly breaks off from diminishing returns. And I think the next all-time high will be reached faster. I don't think it's going to take like 2.5 years for us to reach a new all-time high. I think we will see 11 months bear, and then the recovery to new heights, I personally think, will be faster. Again, time will tell. It's a lot of speculation at this point, but this is the sort of skeleton that I'm seeing for Bitcoin at the moment, and I hope that answers a little bit of questions that people may have in their mind. I did do a much more extended analysis of 1 hour almost over on the Moon Show, going to different things, but I think this is the basis and the fundamentals of that analysis. This is everything that you pretty much need to know. And for everybody wondering, okay, can we not see Bitcoin go into a new all-time high now? Do you really think like it's 100% over? Well, to me, the probabilities are very strong. I think there's about a 95% chance that yes, we are going to a bear market. It's just that, there were so many reasons we went into over the past week. But if you go to the RSI, in all of these dips you've experienced, the RSI always held 43, and we broke below now with a confirmation. Last time we did such thing was in the last cycle, and that, you eventually went into oversold over on the weekly, and that was towards the bottom of the bear market. So that's just one of the things that tells me, okay, we're in a bear market. But in the short term, some good news is I think we're going to see a bounce, and I think we're going to see a bounce towards the 200 daily moving average. I think we're going to do that. We have done so in prior cycles. So you essentially always retest the 200 daily moving average before continuing your bear market. That happened in the last cycle. It happened in the cycle prior. It also happened in the cycle before that, which was the Genesis. And it's pretty crazy that Bitcoin even did this in the Genesis cycle. You retested, and then boom, down goes the price of Bitcoin. I think the same thing is going to take place in this cycle too. The range, the time range that it takes you to get back up is usually about 50 to 70 days. So I think over the next month and a half, we can do that. I don't think new all-time highs will be reached, but I think we will see a test and then a correction down lower. That's what I think is going to take place, and that's basically where I'm also shorting Bitcoin. I'll talk more about those later, but if you're looking for a place to be trading, you can go to the description of today's video, to Weeks, Pinex for trading bots, and all of our other partners to start trading. That's where we're going to start shorting, and that's where we're going to take some more profits and then short Bitcoin. Currently, that is the picture that I'm looking at. I'm just wondering, am I missing anything? I am missing something. Fibonacci, I think we're going to see the bounce soon, because Fibonacci, we bounced from the 0.866 beautifully, or in fact the 0.886 beautifully. We're currently holding the 0.786. I think in the short term, we can come down to the 8182s again. I'll show you why in the hourly time frame. But I think we will see that bounce on a more intermediate level soon towards that 200 daily moving average. Also, on the weekly time frame, you have now converted prior resistance of a huge multi-cycle pattern into now support. I think that's also another great sign. Going into the 4-hourly time frame though, 4-hourly time frame, you do have a bear flag, which I shared over on the Crypto Kids Telegram community. I'm not a huge fan of it. It doesn't look good. I'm not shorting it. I'm not longing anything. The only thing that I am doing is anticipating a potential correction to these lows once more, where hopefully you can create a double bottom and then start making your way to the 200 daily moving average as swiftly as possible. Before ending it off, guys, MSTR, just one thing. Regardless of how much MSTR price falls, regardless of how much Bitcoin's price falls, MSTR will not be forced to sell their Bitcoin, because that is just not how their debt is structured. So please stop the FUD on MSTR. MSTR will not have to sell their Bitcoin. All right. So guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all on the next video soon. Take care and bye-bye. But I am bearish on the MSTR stock price. Okay. I am quite bearish. I think a move to 240 is possible. If Bitcoin bounces to the 200 daily moving average, then MSTR will likely bounce here also, and then continue coming down to 107. Again, I think a bounce is going to happen quite soon, because you've entered oversold levels that you've not seen essentially since the bear market bottom and also the COVID crash, right? So I think the bounce will happen soon on MSTR, and I think the bounce soon will happen on Bitcoin. So guys, take care, and as always, bye-bye.